Alright, so this is my 3/16 gap. That's my mark based off of the inspection door. We're going to take a measurement off the corner of that to, a straight line all the way to that mark that I have, and then we're going to check both sides. That side's already done. I'm just showing this side. For the most part, there's still a little bit of like welding I need to do right on the end, but I'm just going to show this area. So let's take a measurement. Alright, so 23 1/4. Yep, 23 1/4. I just went ahead and put a straight line reference off the end of that, so that way when I go to put my new piece down, I'll have something to go off of to make sure that it's in the same spot. So when I go to cut this out, it's going to be up to me depending on where I put it, if that makes sense. So it is possible to get it off, and I'm using that to reference to know where it needs to be lined up. Alright, so that works for me. Looks pretty good. We're gonna probably take the brackets off the back side on both sides and kind of fine tune it a little bit more. We'll also work with this gap to need to add metal to the end of this fender and make sure it's straight. Just kind of like what we did with the doors, we're gonna do the same up here. If you look at this gap, it's not terrible, but it's a lot bigger than this side. I think that side looks a lot better. And it might have to do with just the position of the fender and the way that the doors were flared out. This is just how it's, ended up being bolted up, and the way it looks good, starting from the rear to the front. So that's the position it needs to be in for it to be able to be lined up with the door on this side, and then same with that side. The cowl is slightly over. I don't even think it could go over anymore, actually. So if you look at that hole, we're basically on the edge. And then this fender looks a lot straighter than that side. I think this fender is a lot more straight overall as far as like all the mounting points. I still think that this fender is crooked this way. I think it's stamped that way. I don't think it's the way it's like bolted up to the car. If I put the other fender on, it looks great. Just to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Go ahead and close this. So you can see how it's really, really close here, and then it gets wider the further back it goes. So we're also gonna have to do something up front here. We'll have to cut this, move it in, and I think that gap's probably gonna be fine. Looks about the same. It'll be close. All right, so this is what I'm gonna do to try to keep these brackets in line, like the spacing correct. I'm going to put some holes here and mount that. We'll cut this off right at that mark, and then we'll put some holes here before we remove the bracket. So that way when I take it off, it'll keep the spacing no matter what. So this might be a little bit overkill, but I want to do this once and be done. I'm going to take an extra few steps just to make sure that it's in the correct spot. All right, here's my jig. So we got it bolted up here. And then we have these side pieces that are pretty much going to give the depth, assuming it's flared. I mean, maybe it could be flared differently on the other hatch, but we're going to use this as a guide. And well, obviously when we set this up, we're just going to tack it in place, throw it on the car, and make sure it's good before we fully weld it. But this should give us a good starting point. This hatch looks good on that car with the way it's set up on this hatch. So I'm assuming if I transfer it over, it should be good, or at least really close. All right, this seems to be working out. Looks like the spacing's the same. Got some weld through primer down, everything cleaned up. I'm just gonna tack it on both sides of each bracket, and then we'll throw it on the car and see how it fits. All right, moment of truth. It fits perfect. Super happy with that. I'm really glad my jig worked. It took forever to make, it feels like. A couple hours at least. So, couldn't be happier. Now we just need to work on the gaps on the sides. It looks like the gap up here is pretty good, but the sides are pretty wavy. This looks like it flares out on the end. This looks like it flares out the same direction, so it's closer here. That's gonna have to get open. Quarter panel is a little bit wavy. Both of these panels are gonna have to get worked, like no matter what. Honestly, the more I work on this, the more I get annoyed. There's like contamination all over, having to fix this. And then I started thinking, I was like, maybe this is out of round, and that's why it was in, and maybe just the hinge needed to be shimmed or something. But the gaps are consistent. Like, that's pretty straight. It's pretty straight on this side. The rounded areas are where it needs to be on both sides. So I'm not sure. And then I started looking at this, and it's like, if I have to push this back so much, is that gonna line up? And then I start looking at this bracket. You can see it looks like it actually might be off. But then if I come over to this side, it looks like it's gonna be on. So if I were to shim that hinge, then that would be lined up, and maybe that would line up those holes, but then this side would be off. So I think, I mean, the old hatch fit perfect. Everything lined up. So it's got to be this, right? And then the other hatch that I got was also off too, from the same company. So yeah, I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, just double checking my work. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. And yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, like, same thing. If I were to shim that, then this would open up. It would get tighter there, and then the whole thing would just be crooked. But it's not. The way it sits now, it's even pretty much all the way around. So just one of those things. I guess it's aftermarket panel, and I guess they can shoot for OEM quality, but I don't know. This one definitely doesn't have it. And then, I was looking at the edges. It's kind of hard to tell, but basically down this entire piece, pretty much on both sides, you can kind of tell right there. Pretty much every edge on this hatch, this one specifically, the other one wasn't as bad, but there are like massive ripples on the edge of this. Maybe I can get a close-up right here. Yeah, so you can see right there. Super wavy. And then some of these edges aren't rolled over very nice. And then there's a couple of spots. Where was I looking at? I think maybe right there. Yeah, so this hatch goes in and then comes back out like it's sunken in right here. So it just poor quality. Honestly, that's really what it comes down to. This entire hatch is just poor quality. So like I said, the more I work on it, the more things I see it's wrong, and I get more and more annoyed. But we're gonna fix it. What else are we gonna do? I already had to move those brackets over, for it to be mounted in the proper spot, and it's too late to return it or do anything like that, so we're just gonna keep trucking and fix what we can. So I'm thinking if this doesn't line up, this little dovetail piece or whatever it is, we'll have to, I guess, modify these holes and just kind of shim it over some. And it doesn't look like it's too far off. I mean, if anything, that's probably about as far off it is off. How far off that it is, I'm getting frustrated. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna order new pieces. I can't find my old pieces for this hatch, so I'll get some new ones. So I did check to this gap here to the gap over on that side, and if it was crooked, then I would see a tighter gap here. Well, no, actually it would be a bigger gap here and a tighter gap over there, but it's not. So something on that side of this hatch is just completely out of whack. Alright, so I'm just gonna compare the two hatches. We'll measure the old one and the new one. I just want to see how far off it was. So I got that pulled tight, and then I put a magnet down just to keep it in place. And then the edge of this, let's see, 41 7/8, right on the edge. Alright, same spot, and we are at 41 7/8. So it looks like, this edge right here, it's about an 1/8 inch off is what it looks like. So everything is pushed in an 1/8 inch. Alright, so I ordered a new wiper cowl. It's actually pretty good overall, but I think I have some bad luck. This entire corner is dented in pretty bad. It almost looks like it happened before it was even coated. I don't see any dings or marks or anything on top of this coating, and the box that came in, there's no damages. So they just straight up sent it out like this. Overall though, the quality itself, like this panel has a little bit of a dent right there, I see, but it's a lot better than the wiper cowl that I have. Better starting point, I guess, if you want to call it that. Alright, new cowl's in. I did have to modify it a little bit. This tab here appears to be too far over this way, so I had to take material off of that to be able to get this entire thing to slide down this way. There's too tight of a gap over there. Overall though, this cowl from Z-Car Depot is not bad. Alright, so we got this pretty close with metal. We're going for this gap right here, all the way to the back of the fender. So the reason why I did it like this, I added metal only up to here, it just, I feel like would look weird, because eventually I'm going to have to end it to when it gets to the gap that I want. And anytime you're looking down this, you're just going to see the edge of the metal. So like, there's an angle, or like when this inspection plate is lifted, you'll just see, you know, a piece of metal just right on the top. So I went to the spot a little bit past so I could taper it in to where it's the edge of the fender basically, and you're not going to be able to see past that. So it'll look like the entire thing is just all the way out to that point. So we ran it all the way to here, and then the rest of the way is going to be filler. So that way I can do this entire piece and then build up to that point. And I feel like it'll just look so much better that way. You won't be able to tell that, you know, it was, you know, just straight up welded on and then, you know, left. So we got this pretty good. I need to take a little bit of material off the back right here. which it's just the way that this cowl cover kind of angles at the point here, so we just need to match it. It should be good. Alright, so I figured while I'm already putting holes in everything, I might as well just do the louvers too. Alright, let's talk about the work that's been done for the past month. I've spent close to 120 hours on this, on all these gaps and, you know, just random stuff in between. So let's start with the doors. That's pretty much where I started. This is where I spent most of my time, and I think it came out very good. The front of the door also, I think, came out pretty good. Some of the stuff I just kind of threw back on there, so this will actually get pushed in a little bit more. This gap's a little bit too tight. It's kind of hard to, you know, where I set it, to get it to the exact same spot again. So I'll have to make, I've been using, where is it at? So this is a tool I made. Fits in there perfect. I need to make another one so I can, you know, set that there and put another one up top here, and then when I go to tighten it down, it should keep it in place. All right, so the inspection plate I think turned out pretty good. This still needs to get moved around slightly, but it is pretty consistent overall. This spot right here needs worked with body filler. The hood, this gap right here, I need to do another layer of fiberglass on the end. I only did, I think, 2 layers. And then the other side I haven't even touched yet. I still need to do that. And then the cowl, I think, turned out pretty good. I had problems with this fitting originally. It kept touching. You can see like the back of this inspection plate as it would open. I had to, what did I end up doing? So these little grommets that go inside here, I actually had to hammer the metal a little bit back. And then I had to work the little flanges to get this to slide back further. That worked out pretty good. So I had plenty of room for this to be able to open, and hopefully no paint touches. You know, when I actually build up film on there, it's going to suck when I go to open this and it just scrapes it all off on the end. This gap is very consistent. A lot of this, like this is loose, it'll get bolted down. But pretty happy with that side. This side was, obviously it took a lot more work. This needs to come out some, and this needs to be built up a little bit. There's too much of a gap here, but the rest of the way it's pretty good. It lines up with the inspection plate. And then this gap here, I had to add metal from here to the end, and then the rest of it's gonna have filler pretty much all the way down this entire thing, so that way it's, you know, one even gap up to this point right here. Inspection plate, the gap from here to this wiper cowl looks pretty consistent with the other side. I actually haven't measured it yet. I may play with, you know, the adjustment there too. Maybe I'll move this back a little bit more. Fiberglass needs to be added to this hood to get a better gap. This, for whatever reason, just flares off on the end, so I need to fix that. This gap is pretty good, and same thing, gap here is good, but when I threw it back on, it wants to like pull down some, so this actually needs to go up just a hair. But Very good though. Happy with the way the doors came out, which makes sense because I spent the most time on the doors. This side looks very good. It's still consistent with the rest of the panels. It's nice and straight flat all the way across. Same with the fronts too. So the hatch took a lot of work. I mean, we made that custom bracket to be able to switch the mounts over from the old hatch to the new hatch. That was a lot of work. And then this was all cut up and moved back. So these gaps are not bad. I think I'm still going to do a little bit more work. A lot of this work is going to be finished with filler. I'm just trying to get it as close as I can with metalworking and then finish it off with body filler. All right, let's take a few minutes to talk about like this gap job in general. It's challenging. I don't think it's like the hardest thing in the world, but it's very time consuming. The problem that I struggle with is the inconsistencies between these panels. So like this aftermarket hood doesn't want to line up with this, aftermarket Fender from a different company. And then I'm using OEM buckets. So just everything needs to be touched and it's just time consuming. I think I could probably spend a little bit more time learning like the metalworking. I don't think I'm horrible, but I definitely am not the best at it. But it's enough to where I can get it close to body filler and not have to go too crazy with it. I just needed to get it close and I think I'm there. So, like I said, I think I spent probably 120 to 140 hours just on the gaps and a small like few jobs in between, like welding up holes and stuff. Like the hatch, all the holes there need to be re-welded. So I could definitely spend some more time on these gaps, but I have to remind myself that I'm building this car to drive it, and it doesn't need to be perfect.